Hi, I'm going to go over the order of trade activity for November the 5th, 2020, and I have up on my screen the activity client and some analysis. So as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 trades that were tripped yesterday, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Looks like 9 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 9 buys, 5 short sells that were tripped. Okay, so the first stock is CGC. It was tripped around 11:35. As you can see, very strong yesterday. It jumped up 11.5%, and this morning it actually jumped up even more. So you can see it was a very strong stock. And I picked it up at 11:35, and you can see by the end of the day it was up above where it was at 11:35, even though it stabilized at the end of the day. And the analysis should show the same thing. As you can see, by the end of the day, things were kind of like stabilizing, even though MACD is showing that it was strong in the morning. It kind of like tapered off at the end of the day, which kind of like gives an explanation of why it was moving sideways. DI, same kind of aspects. It was moving sideways. Again, strong in the morning, in the afternoon, just moving sideways, back and forth between, strong buy, strong sell kind of signals. And the Bollinger Band, again, showing the same type of thing. It went up and then stabilized. But in general, it was still a buy operation. CPRI, Capri Holdings Limited, up 2% yesterday. Up 8.5% yesterday. So it's another good stock. But as you can see, it kind of like opened up probably at that level and then stabilized. But it identified at around 1 p.m. So around there, it did come up after 1 p.m., so there was still a potential for a buy at that point. Analysis is roughly showing the aspect that, yeah, it came up and kind of like reverted. So it was up early morning, reverted, and the signals were actually showing that across the board, and the Bollinger Band somewhat did respond and was reversing, even though, as you can see, 9%. So it started the day off very strongly. So the aspect of it coming back negatively probably would not have been something that would have occurred because of the strength at open for the stock. Okay. CF, not too bad. CF Industries Holdings. Again, it came up, and tripped just before 12 p.m. and it did actually have a high above that, and then kind of like stabilized around that thing. So it did have potential to actually be a purchase. And the analysis shows same thing. Yes, it came up around that time, kind of like stabilized mid-afternoon, and then kind of like went back a little bit at the end of the day. And again, the analysis is all showing the same kind of activity, and the Bollinger Band is just representation and showing you, yes, came up, went down. It's still a positive stock because it actually was trading higher after the trigger point, so money could be made still off of that stock. FSLR, First Solar. Again, another strong stock. It looked like it opened up fairly much at that position or at that point, almost 9% increase. And the stock looks to be somewhat consistently moving upwards. OBV is showing strong volume across the day, though MACD is actually showing that it tripped, but it was strong moving at the beginning of the basically signal started just before noontime. As you can see, it actually was moving downwards for the middle afternoon, and then it was bouncing back and forth on MACD. So the moving average was showing that it was strong and then weak for buy and sell, or for buy, I should say. DI is actually showing the same thing. It was strong in the morning, but then settled down. It may have just been because of stock. It hit its peak for the day, or very early on, or even before it opened the day up, and so the rest of the day was just basically stability. There's potential here, but it would have to have been followed very closely because the aspect of it was just stabilized. But again, it looks like a strong stock. So I say that's still a positive stock because the aspect of not really reverting heavily and was moving, somewhat consistently across the board. CNK, Sinmark Holdings, again another strong stock. So today looks like it was a very positive day for at least the stocks that were tripped. Again, 6.5% or 6.25%. That's very strong for that stock. Okay, morning time was roughly just moving sideways for the most part, but you can see the afternoon it shot up volume-wise. MACD was showing that it did have some progress, even though at the end of the day it came back a little bit. DI showing somewhat the same thing, even though DI is showing still positive trend for most of the afternoon. And Bollinger Band, again, result was that it moved up positively. So again, it was a good stock. It was a good stock. Money could be made, but it would have been one that would have had to been followed closely because the aspect it seemed to be, at least price-wise, moving sideways. FTCH, Firetech Limited, it moved up 7.75%, almost 8% if you think about it. But anyways, 7.75%. And in the morning, you tell how strong the stock was yesterday because in the morning it actually moved up 10%. So pre-market, it's actually moving very strongly too. So you can sit there and say, hey, is this the stock you would have bought? And if you actually didn't make any money during the daytime, you could see at this point in time you would have made money because the stock shot up early morning. So it was a very strong stock. The analysis is showing morning time to mid-afternoon it was somewhat just stabilized, and then you can see early afternoon it did jump up a bit. MACD showing the same type of thing, jumped up a bit in the afternoon. DI again showing the same thing. So they're all showing the same thing, and the end result is that Bollinger Band is showing that it's somewhat had a steady positive increase. So again, another positive trade. If you didn't make any money actually on the day trade, you can see that this stock, would have made you money the day after, which is today. Okay, so eBay, which is obviously eBay. Again, moving up strongly, just over 3.25%. So that's a fairly good uprise. Morning, afternoon, it came up. Afternoon, MACD shows it came up in mid-afternoon, and then at the end of the day, MACD was showing that negative or downsiding was moving a bit more stronger. So, you can see it was kind of like leveling off and coming back at the end of the day. DI, again, showing the same results. Strong in the morning, even though it wasn't until the end of the day that DI is showing a reversal. And Bollinger Band is actually an exact representation, even though it was still positive from the point that where it was tripped, it still would have been positive. So this is still a positive trade, even though at the end of the day it still showed somewhat of a reversal, but it still, for the day, was moving positive for most of it, and most likely with monitoring that could have made money. And this is the first shorting identification. Well, not strong movement, but it was tripped as moving negatively, so we'll see what the analysis says. It somewhat was moving sideways, so it dropped early morning and just moved sideways. And OBV somewhat was jumping back and forth. It was stable, for the most part between the high and low points of the afternoon. So you could say it's somewhat stable. MACD again showing stability. DI was actually showing strong strong negative movement in the morning, and again moving back and forth. DI same type of thing. And it seemed like it ended the day up as a negative, and as you can see, the end result is that it actually came down. So that would have been a positive trade. Again, though you would have to monitor it a bit closely just to make sure that you get it at its low point. Danauer Corporation, not much movement there, at least percentage-wise. It did move down, obviously. Analysis is actually showing that it was moving down mid-afternoon and then actually reverted. So this one's going to be a tricky one. It looks like it was reverting from its shorting to positive movement. And the afternoon, MACD is showing positive all afternoon, DI showing positive, and again, that's the end result. So this would not have been a good selling opportunity because it reverted at the end of the day, and no positive result would have come during the daytime for that stock. So that's a non-positive stock. Interesting. This one is actually identified as a short. So there must have been a point where it was coming down, even though the stock is actually showing that it actually is moving positively price-wise. But yeah. So it was showing around 215, around there, and OBV is not really showing any negative movement extensively. MACD though is showing negative movement around that time. DI was roughly showing it back and forth. Bollinger Band is actually showing the fact that it did come down but did revert. So that one somewhat, no, would not have been a positive movement. That would have been not a positive trade. JWN is showing twice. Just remove it. Excuse me. HL, Hecla Mining, 15 and almost 3/4. So that stock was moving very strongly. That's not the right stock. 36. Oh, that's the stock. I was looking at the wrong stock. Okay. Well, anyways, this is Hecla here. Okay. So Hecla. No. Okay. No. Yeah, I was here anyways. Hecla showed obviously strong movement. Afternoon, moving very heavily, volume-wise. Moving average kind of like bounced back and forth, but as you can see, it was pretty much positive for most of the monitoring time here. Afternoon it shot up. At the end of the day, it kind of reverted back a little bit. DI is showing the same thing, even though positive movement was somewhat, fixed for the day. And again, the Bollinger Band is showing that the end result is positive. So that would have been a positive trade. And Conagra Brands, not down much, but it was down. MACD was showing that it reverted at the end of the day, or afternoon, late afternoon, I guess. MACD showing that, yeah, it was coming down in the afternoon. DI bouncing back and forth, so not strongly indication-wise there, and Bollinger Band showing down. So the end result is that the analysis was fairly showing it moving negatively, and Bollinger Band result was showing that it did move negative. So that would have been another positive trade on that aspect. So that's the trade activity for the 5th of November 2020, and as you can see, it was fairly strong. We're talking at least, what, of the 13 stock, 11 were positive and 2 would have been negative. So we're talking easily over 90% positive trading that would have occurred on today if you traded the stocks that were indicated. So that's for today. Thank you.